Well, we've had him on our show several times, and he's been an Alberta political figure on the right for many years, not just as an elected MLA, but before that as an advocate for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation in that province. And he's also spoken at some of our rallies in Alberta against the carbon tax and in support of pipeline projects. But Derek Fildebrandt has gotten on the wrong side of the United Conservative Party, getting into quarrels with its leadership over some missteps he himself has made, and then over nominations in his own riding. So Derek has decided to start his own political party, and he joins us now to talk about it. Derek Fildebrandt, nice to see you again.
Thanks for having me back on the show, Ezra.
Did I accurately sum things up? I mean, why don't we just refresh our viewers' memories? How was it that you went from being a leading MLA in the Conservative opposition, the Wild Rose Party, to being an independent MLA on the outs with the United Conservatives? I think that's important to go over because it informs your decisions going forward. Why are you no longer an MLA under Jason Kenney's party?
Well, a year ago, there was a series of news stories that were released, one after another, that were planted there by political opponents and opponents in the media. Some of them were real mistakes that I had made, for which I took responsibility and corrected. Others were largely fabricated or spun, which had little semblance in truth or reality at all. But I felt the need at the time because many of these things had been done almost exactly the same by many of my colleagues in the UCP. I felt the need at the time just to not defend myself, because it would have harmed many of my colleagues who had done the exact same things. And so I sort of jumped on the grenade, stepped aside from the party, what I thought was going to be temporarily, and let things roll on. Then in late November, early December of last year, I sat down with Jason Kenney, and we discussed the path forward. And he said, Derek, we want you back. We want you to run in the next election, and you can run in any constituency in Alberta except for your own, because my own constituency had been redrawn by the NDP for the next election. Right now I'm Strathmore Brooks, and my neighboring riding is Chestermere Rockview, and they kind of combined half of each of them into a new constituency of Chestermere Strathmore, and there was an incumbent Tory MLA, Leela, here in the next door riding, and she happens to be one of the only two women and three visible minorities in the Tory caucus. And so when I sat down with Jason, he said, you can't run in that riding. And I said, why? You committed to this grassroots guarantee where local Conservatives would get to pick who their candidate is, not yourself or any other party backroomers. And he said, yeah, but in this case it's different. And his exact quote was, how would it look if a blonde bearded redneck were to defeat one of our only women and visible minorities in the caucus? We just can't let it happen. And so Jason and I had drifted apart from there. And, I had made some missteps, but he had given every indication in plain language that it was all water under the bridge and no big deal, and that everything would be fine until they kind of flipped the switch and said that I would not be welcome back. And you know what? In hindsight, I've had time to look back, and I'm very glad that happened, because I may have still had the blinders on to not be able to see the absolute corruption within the Tory party. That this is not the United Conservative Party that I believed that we were founding when I was working hard to merge the Wild Rose and PC parties. I thought we would take the best of both parties. But instead, we have just recreated the corrupt old Tory party and its entitlement to power, and I want nothing to do with it. And that's why.
I mean, that's pretty heavy talk. I mean, the word corruption, of course, there's financial corruption, and I'm sure you don't mean that. There's political corruption, which I'm guessing you mean in terms of violating political or ethical norms. That's pretty heavy talk, and I think Conservatives who don't have skin in the game with you or with Jason Kenney would say, that looks like sour grapes. If you made some missteps, and we don't need to rehash them, but if you made some missteps, and I know that Jason Kenney has said you were not candid with him as a leader, but if you're now not allowed to run, I mean, what would you say to someone who's saying, well, you couldn't get your way in the party, so you're taking your marbles and you're starting your own party, and it's not really about corruption, it's about getting your own seat in the legislature?
Well, I'll say this. Jason Kenney is lying through his teeth. He's a career politician who's done nothing about politics since the day he was born. And he'll say and do anything for power.
Well, I mean, look, Jason Kenney and I have our share of disagreements. But I got to tell you, when I look at you and I look at Jason Kenney, I see actually a similar career path. Taxpayers Federation guy, and then provincial MLA. He went to the federal MP. I think you guys are pretty similar, actually, in terms of...
Well, yeah. Well, I've done more than just politics, and I never campaigned on never accepting a pension and then being eligible now for a $3 million pension, that kind of hypocrisy. So look, when Jason Kenney and us were bringing the new Tory party together, we said that there would be open Democratic grassroots nominations. And he very clearly has broken that in my case and in dozens of other cases across Alberta, where good Conservative candidates have been either disqualified from running or where they've just been rigging the rules and tilting the field within nomination races. So it's not a matter of, if you lose something fair and square, you can accept it and go on. But in the case of my constituency, the people Conservatives were denied even the right to choose their own Conservative candidate. They appointed Leela Ahir because of race and skin color. They didn't let myself run, and then they bullied and refused to let anybody else run, even regular Joe Blows, who did not want her as the candidate for being too liberal and too tokenistic. They wanted a real nomination. And the party would not let people in my constituency select their own candidate. So there's a reason that from the Strathmore side of my old constituency, every single last Wild Rose board member is not with the Tories. They're with the Freedom Conservative Party here.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
I'll just say that if you're not able to pick who your local Conservative candidate is, then you don't have a Democratic say in the party, and you're just expected to vote for the candidate put in front of you like this was a Soviet election.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure when you started scorching Jason, but it's no surprise that he wouldn't want you, if you call a fella corrupt and a career politician.
Well, I didn't say any of no. I was on the best. I was nothing but polite and nice with him until he decided that the people in my constituency would not have the right to select their own candidate.
Well, I mean, Derek, as you know, we've supported you in the past when you've been at odds with your party leaders. When Brian Jean suspended you from shadow cabinet over your comments on Kathleen Wynne, we actually set up a petition called Save Derek, and I think we were partly to credit for getting you back in the fold. So we're fans of Derek Fildebrandt. We're fans of Jason Kenney, although we have some disagreements with him. But let's put the past aside, because you have a new project, and I remember our last discussion, you bruited the idea of a new party. I think you even talked briefly about Western separatism. I think you might have had a one-liner about that, if my memory serves me correctly. You have gone ahead and started this new Freedom Conservative Party. Tell me a little bit about that. You actually took the legal structure of an existing small party, so you don't have to sign up thousands of new members from scratch. So are you right now a functioning legal political party in Alberta right now?
Yes, we are. So, after my disagreements with Jason, I considered running as an independent in my constituency. But then when I saw the absolute corruption of nominations across the province and the party, the Tories starting to take a lot of liberal-like positions, mimicking the NDP on things like government ownership of the pipeline, refusing to let their MLAs vote for or against Bill 9, taking away free speech right for pro-lifers, or voting for Bill 2, which was an NDP bill that established race and gender quotas in the private sector. All of these things led up to me believing that this was not just a local disagreement and a problem in my constituency, but it was a problem across Alberta. So we came together with some Conservatives, Libertarians, and Alberta Patriots, and we founded the Freedom Conservative Party of Alberta. We used the registration and legal foundation of the Alberta First Party so that we didn't spend 9 months going out collecting signatures. and we're able to start work right away. And so we've got a great team together from across the province. We've been building up, signing up members, raising money, and we are having our founding convention on October 20th in Chestermere.
And folks can find out more information at freedomconservativeparty.ca. We flashed briefly your website on the screen there. I have a couple of questions about it. Jason Kenney's success, whatever other criticisms you have of him, was he came in, took over the Progressive Conservative Party itself, and forced it, really. I mean, led it, encouraged it, cajoled it, poked it into a merger with Wildrose. And I don't know if that would have happened without him. So the whole theme was unite the right, a replica of what Stephen Harper had done federally. Now, I was always of the position that wasn't even necessary because the NDP vote in 2015 was such an anomaly, and every by-election we've seen federally and provincially shows that they're going to be wiped out. So I never really believed in the necessity to it, but Albertans seem to like it, and so it is done. Isn't what you're doing the exact opposite? You're doing splitism. You're splitting instead of uniting the right. You're dividing the right, and isn't that exactly what most conservatives in Alberta, in both the Wildrose and the former PC party, wanted to do against? And I mean, again, I believe Rachel Notley's going to be crushed like a bowl of eggs, but isn't splitism against what conservatives want in Alberta?
Well, I'd pose the question a different way. I'd say who is actually dividing conservatives, federally and provincially? My party has left me federally and provincially. It's the parties have been undemocratic, not letting the members make the decisions that they have a legal right and a moral right to make, both on policies and selecting candidates and their leaders. If the leadership and elites of those parties abandon what they're supposed to be standing for and their duty to their members, it is them who is dividing conservatives. Now, I was perhaps one of the very first people in Alberta to be pushing to merge the Wildrose and PC parties, like yourself. I didn't believe that was actually necessary to defeat the NDP. It was an anomaly for a number of reasons, but nonetheless felt it was probably the right thing to do, but under the right circumstances. And I believed that, there's a lot of backroom politics people have no idea about, but during the negotiation process, there were some real problems, particularly coming from on the Wildrose side. To be fair to Jason, these problems were primarily coming from our side, which was really putting the cart before the horse and having the leadership race done too quickly before we even had a constitution for the party. And this meant that the way things were done is the members didn't even get to write the constitution of their own party. So
right.
They had
Derek,
conservative members.
That may all be true, but that's water under the bridge. That party doesn't exist anymore. By the way, You might recall I encouraged you to throw your own hat into the ring. I mean, I was hoping you had done so, but that's all past tense. Now everyone's looking towards 2019, the next election.
So
what
I'm saying, though, is that it's not good enough just to get rid of the NDP. The Tories are not the party I believed we were founding. They are proposing a 40-degree change from the NDP. I believe we need a 180-degree change. I don't want to keep one major item that the NDP has done. I want to completely destroy the legacy of both Rachel Notley, Jim Prentice, Alison Redford, and Ed Stelmach. We can't simply turn the clock back to 2015. We got to remember that we had 8 years of relatively bad government in Alberta with massive deficits, overspending, and an unaccountable government for 3 premiers before Rachel Notley. Rachel Notley just made it worse. All right, well, let me get back to the clock to 2015. Just turning back the clock to 2015, I don't think is going to be the answer, which is why I believe we need a bolder and more aggressive conservative party, a more grassroots conservative party that isn't captive to special interests.
All right. There's some ridings where I think the NDP vote in 2019 is going to be single digits. And your own riding is probably one of them, and many Calgary ridings. But there are some ridings, maybe in Lethbridge, probably not, in Edmonton for sure, where the NDP might still be able to re-elect some MLAs. And you never know what can happen between now and then in politics. A year is a long time. are you not risking re-electing NDP MLAs in Edmonton or other less right-wing ridings than your own by fielding Freedom Conservative Party candidates to split the right-wing vote?
No, we're not, because we're not fielding candidates in any of those constituencies. So we made a very conscious decision when we founded the Freedom Conservative Party that as bad as the Tories are, they are admittedly better than the NDP. Now, better than the NDP is a pretty low bar to meet, and we think in most of the province that is naturally conservative, people shouldn't have to just settle for better than the NDP. But in constituencies where the NDP have any real chance of winning, we have decided we will not be fielding candidates there.
So how do you list those? Is that 10 ridings? Is that 40 ridings? How many ridings are you willing to stay away from to not risk splitting the vote?
So it's going to be based on a case-by-case basis from the last combination of results in the last election, more recent polling, and circumstances on the ground, such as who our candidates are and who the other candidates are. And so, as a broad generalization, I can tell you that in most of rural and small town Alberta, places like my constituency, the NDP have absolutely 0% chance of winning, and we will be fielding candidates. In parts of some of the outer parts of Calgary, in the south and in the west, we will be fielding candidates. But in the more downtown areas of Calgary, in Lethbridge, and in parts of the far north and probably the vast majority of Edmonton, we will not be fielding candidates because we feel that our position on the ballot there could actually potentially help to elect the NDP. Now, I don't think, even if we ran candidates everywhere, I think the NDP are going to get absolutely crushed in the next election, no matter what. But we also don't want to help contribute to the election of any NDPs, period, even if they're not in a position to be in government. We want us to be the second biggest party in the legislature. Yeah.
Let me ask you this.
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, you have had a a prominent career. We mentioned with the Taxpayers Federation and with the Wild Rose. Pardon me, I'm coughing. What would you say to people who said, well, this is just a one-man band. This is a vanity project. Instead of running as an independent, independents have a very poor track record in Canada. This is really a party of one. Would you acknowledge that, or would you say it's more than that? Are there any other personalities involved? Are there any other prospective candidates? At your convention next month, will there be other talent that is showcased? Who else is with you?
Mm-hmm. Well, the people saying that are generally the people who are afraid of what we can do. They know that we've got significant support across Calgary, rural and small town Alberta, even building up in Edmonton, even though we don't intend to run candidates there. No, we've got a great team. We've got a board of governors from across the province. We're attracting some really great candidates who will be announcing that they'll be seeking nominations in the next few months. Some of those people will be at our convention in October. We've got a really great team here. And one of the problems really in all Canadian politics, Alberta, federally, and in most provinces, is that political parties are almost all one-man bands, where the leader is not just the main face of the party, which is inevitable, but they control everything, and they don't even let their MLAs vote freely or their MPs vote freely. They won't let them speak up. If they happen to have a different opinion than the leader on, say, supply management or free speech rights, they're told to shut up. And we're not like that. We are the only party, I believe, in Canada that has abolished the position of party whip. Now, right now, it's the caucus is just myself, so that's a symbolic move at this point. But it is in our founding documents that we will not even have the position of a party whip. So it is very important to us to have a team that we've got. Sorry, go ahead. You
mentioned you're going to have some great candidates, and I'm sure you'll want to time that strategically probably at your October conference. But is there anyone else you can name at this point that the public would recognize and say, there seems to be a crystallization of other people? Like you mentioned, I think you said dozens of ridings where the United Conservative Party has been heavy-handed. Can you name someone else who has joined your movement?
I would be breaking confidence if I were to mention any of the folks who might be more household names in Alberta. But we certainly have had, especially some of the ridings where there's been a very corrupted nomination process where Conservatives have not been allowed to select their candidate in a fair and free race, and in others. We've had a lot of good candidates come forward. We have not opened our MLA nominations yet because we're going through our leadership process at this very moment, and we're going towards our founding policy convention and leadership vote in October, as I said. But when that's done, we're going to be opening up the nomination process in constituencies for candidates to come forward. But I can't. I'd be breaking confidence if I mentioned those names right now because they're not public, but they will be coming forward as we open up the nominations.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that's true. I mean, things have to happen in their due course of time. Well, listen, I'm grateful for your time today. I've had a number of critical questions because I acknowledge that Jason Kenney has been timid on certain files, and I'm not privy to the kind of shenanigans that go on in nominations. That seems to happen in every party. But let me end with a more positive note. I think that Alberta traditionally has had a conservative-ish government, and the opposition parties were usually on the left. It might be something that is more reflective of the province's true character, and might be better governance if the dominant party, let's say the government next year, were the United Conservative Party, but there was a principled right-wing opposition that helped keep it honest, because the alternative is for the media party to pull Jason Kenney and the UCP to the left, which is, I believe, what has happened. Every misstep that Jason Kenney has made, every watering down of policy, even your description of the nomination stakes in Chestermere, it's all driven by his concern about the perception that the media party will have of him. Having a counterweight to Jason Kenney on the right to balance the media party on the left could be a salutary thing. I just don't know how serious a movement the Freedom Conservative Party is. I guess maybe you'll show us at your October convention.
Indeed. And I'd put this to you. There's the potential not just to be an opposition party on the right, but potentially to hold the balance of power. If the NDP were to hold most of Edmonton, which is a possibility, and the Tories were to knock the NDP out of much of the rural far north and Calgary, and the FCP were to form a strong caucus, you could see the potential where the FCP would hold the balance of power after the next election. So kind of on the opposite side of how the Greens hold the balance of power in British Columbia and work with the NDP, the Freedom Conservative Party would be willing to work with the Tories after the next election in some kind of agreement or coalition if we were able to, agree on some key governing priorities. And that would be a much more conservative government than just the Tories governing alone. It would be a significantly more conservative government. It'd be a more accountable government. And without the ability of a single party leader to whip everything, it would be a government that would actually have to listen to people and let MLAs vote and speak freely, rather than just be told to shut up and follow the party line every time.
Mm-hmm. Well, it'll be very interesting, and I think a lot of the proof will be in your founding convention. If it's more than just the Derek Fildebrandt party, if these other personalities do come, if you have grassroots people, I think that's my own view, my own opinion is that's going to be a key moment. I think we will pay attention to it and we'll cover it, and we look forward to seeing what happens. We care about Alberta and we think it needs to be fixed. So thanks for spending time with us today.
Well, I'll tell you this, you won't be banned from this Conservative convention.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks, Derek. I appreciate the update and answering my most candid questions.
No problem.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Well, that's Derek Fildebrandt, been on our show many times before in different capacities. A new capacity today as the new interim leader of the Freedom Conservative Party. I put my questions to him. What do you think? Am I too critical? Am I too negative? Am I too soft on the fella? Send me an email to ezra@therebel.media, and we will continue to cover the phenomenon to see if it does grow into what Derek says it will.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, The Ezra Levant Show, weekdays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Every day I do a monologue, interview a guest, and read my fan mail and my hate mail. To subscribe, go to therebel.media/shows.